Welcome back to the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. I'm Joe Noga, joined by Paul Hoynes. Hoynes, the Guardians take 2 out of 3 over the weekend from the A's in Sacramento. After they come back with a 4-5 road trip, 9 games out west. They finally beat a left-handed starter again on Sunday. 2 wins against lefties on the trip. They beat J.P. Sears and the A's. Emmanuel Clase gets back-to-back saves over the weekend. Robbie Ray in San Francisco, another left-hander they beat. Are they finally starting to sort of click against lefties, you think?
I think they're starting to find a formula, Joe. Obviously, it helps if Lane Thomas and David Fry can get going. On Sunday, Thomas and Fry each had a hit in that win against Oakland and Sears. And they had some lefties, left on left hits as well. Manzardo, Nolan Jones came through against Sears. So I think the key to beating a lefty is to get contributions from the top to the bottom of the lineup. Jose Ramirez has hit lefties all year, so has Kwan, so is Santana. But when everyone else chips in, it makes it a lot easier.
Are guys like Manzardo and Nolan Jones, kind of showing that maybe they can be platoon proof? Their numbers are almost as good, if not better, in some cases against left-handed pitching for both of them. Early in the season, Manzardo had 3 or 4 home runs against left-handed pitchers, and Jones just seems to be locking in over the last 3 to 4 weeks. So, what are you seeing out of those two guys? And even throw Bo Naylor in there. When he gets a chance to hit against lefties, we've seen him take a couple of guys deep as well.
Yeah, and another Angel Martinez is another guy switch hitter who has hit lefties well. I think out of between Manzardo and Nolan Jones, I think probably Nolan Jones would be the leading candidate to get more at bats against a left-hander. Manzardo really started yesterday because Stephen Vogt wanted to give Carlos Santana 2 days off. So yesterday and Monday's day off, he wanted to pair those 2 days off to give him a rest. So that's why Manzardo mainly was in there. But like you said, Joe, he did hit lefties well early in the season.
So the way the road trip started off, obviously getting swept in Seattle, not great, and offensively, just not a lot of runs to talk about. But in going to San Francisco and going to Sacramento, and Sacramento being a park that right now is surrendering the most runs in all of Major League Baseball, they didn't have necessarily a big offensive explosion over the weekend, but they scored enough runs, and the pitching was really good.
Yeah, the starting pitching was excellent. Just 3 really strong starts. Probably Tanner Bibee throws the first complete game of his career on Friday and loses 5-1. Then Luis Ortiz has a great outing Saturday, 6 scoreless, and Ciccone outdoes Ortiz on Sunday with 7 scoreless innings. So really promising, those 3 guys. And you pair that with Gavin Williams' start Thursday against the Giants when he pitched 6 scoreless innings and left with a 1-0 lead in a game Cleveland eventually lost 2-1. And you're starting to see this rotation, put good start after good start together, and they're starting to, a little competition between the starters. I think that was a good. It was a tough road trip, record-wise and offensive-wise, but from a starting pitching standpoint, they really, that rotation is starting to gel.
Yeah, the offense only producing about 3.6, 3.7 runs per game, bottom third of the league in terms of run production there. But if you get that starting rotation 3 to 4 runs per night and hand it over to the bullpen, and Emmanuel Clase has figured things out. He's got us sort of holding on to the edges of our seats every time he goes out there. The last couple of save opportunities, he's had the bases loaded, and the tying runs on up or at the on base. You've got to believe that there can be a little confidence now growing, at least on the pitching side of things. As long as you get them 3-4 runs, they're going to get the job done.
Yeah, they're going to keep you in the game, Joe. The problem was on this trip, they scored 21 runs in 9 games. That's just over 2 runs a game. I mean, even if you pitch great, the odds are against you, winning a whole lot of games if you're only averaging 2.3 runs per game or whatever that is, 21 runs over 9 games. It's a short sample size, but like you said, you take the scope of the season, 76 games, whatever they played, they're not even averaging 4 runs a game overall. So that just makes it so hard to win. You have to be perfect or near perfect. Your starting pitchers can't make a mistake, and for sure the bullpen can't make a mistake.
Yeah, and that leads us to like the next question, which is, could help soon be on the way in one form or another. We're getting closer to the trade deadline. We're, a couple months away. You've got the end of June and then into July. The end of July is the trade deadline. There could be a move to get outside help that way, or there could be options coming up from the minors. We're hearing that Juan Brito, he's played in 6 games in the Arizona Complex League. He could be coming east soon and starting an assignment with an affiliate, either Akron or Columbus. He's played in 6 games. He has 4 hits, a home run, 2 RBIs. Shortly thereafter, coming from Columbus, could possibly be Chase DeLauder. He's got hits in 9 of his last 10 games, 4 multi-hit games over that stretch, and a couple of home runs. He's really starting to heat up. What do you think about reinforcements from within, sometime even before the trade deadline?
I think it's a possibility, Joe. Obviously, I think first thing, as the Guardians always say, there has to be a need. Where do these guys play? Where would DeLauder play? Where would Juan Brito play? I think they've been pretty satisfied with Schneemann and Martinez at second base, but Brito's also been playing in right field, so that opens another possibility for him. And DeLauder's an outfielder, so yeah, Joe, I think there's a chance that those guys could be here. I don't know how much the record dictates a move like that. If they really struggle from here on out, they fall 10, 12, 15 games out of first place, I think the chances of us seeing promotions like that would probably be greater than if they stay in contention.
Yeah, currently 8.5 out of first place behind the Tigers, who don't look like they're slowing down anytime. But even as you wrote today in your column this morning, there was a time last year where the Guardians were way out in front in the division, and they sort of came back to the pack a little bit. I think they were within a game or so of Kansas City for a stretch, and then they sort of caught a second wind, took off, and powered through the end of the schedule there. If the Tigers decide to take their foot off the gas, maybe come back to the pack a little bit, does that change things for not only calling up prospects, but going out and pursuing a bat and making a big deal to get somebody to help now?
I think it would. I think from the outside looking in, it certainly seemed like that would be the move to make. But, I think the Guardians look at things differently, Joe. We saw in 2023, when they decided to raise the white flag, and that team was 1-2 games out of first place. When they were in Houston, they traded Josh Bell, they traded Savali. Before they went on that trip, they traded Rosario. They dumped those veteran guys. So I think it all depends how this ball club is playing, what the read of the front office is on the ball club. What the potential is? Do they think can they help the present and the future with the moves they make, or do they think it's better to kind of pull in your horns and play for 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, that just brings the even odd number year theory into play here. Playoffs in 2020, a real struggle in 2021, prize playoffs in 2022, big time struggle in 23, and then out of nowhere playoffs in a division title in 2024. So yeah, it would stand to reason 2025 down year, 2026 you're looking at the playoffs again. That's the kind of flawed logic that you follow here, baseball fans at least do. As far as we'll talk later on this week about possibility of what guys they could be looking at in terms of trades, what prospects they're willing to part with or not willing to part with, and what history shows they're willing to do and not willing to do. But as far as seeing new faces up here in the lineup in Cleveland in the next couple of weeks, like you said, there really isn't a lot of room unless there's an injury or if somebody just takes a nosedive completely, which nobody really has done recently.
Yeah, I think the kind of big focus on Lane Thomas. What he's getting a few more at bats now. It seemed like he's reached a point that he's past rehabbing the foot. They don't have to really watch him too carefully. He can play every day or close to every day now. So let's see if he takes off. So let's see what happens with him. Perhaps there's a move to be made if he struggles, but. He's right. I mean, he has a track record, so I think they're going to stay with him. But that's the one guy where is center field open. I mean, that if Thomas is struggling, but I don't know. I mean, DeLauder, C.J. Kifus, are those guys center fielders? That's the question I ask.
Yeah, Kafis, I don't think is a center fielder. He's just learning the
Yeah.
outfield, and he's a corner guy. You try to hide him maybe out in right field if that's what you're going to do. DeLauder can play center field. I think he's been a center fielder in the past. He's athletic. He can run, but do you expose him to potential injury if you play him in center field? Is it safer? Is it softer to play in right field if he does come up?
Yeah, that's a big question, and they've paid so much attention to try to keep this guy healthy that I don't think they would expose him that way, especially if he hasn't played a whole lot of center field, and it sounds like he's been playing the corners.
Yeah, that's well, in the corners, that's where you run into the sidewall
Yeah,
and bust up your toe. So you can't win for losing, Hoynes. It doesn't matter. All right, I want to go back to what we were talking about a little bit at the top, and just the idea of your trip back to the minor leagues there over the weekend in Sacramento. What was the feeling? Now, for you personally, you left San Francisco on getaway day, and tell us about your journey to get to Sacramento.
Yeah, Joe, I've never been to Sacramento before. Really didn't know how to get there. I looked at renting a car that was very expensive. Flying was very expensive, so I decided to take a train. Joe, I was like the natural, It was like one of those old time baseball movies. And so I took the bus out of San Francisco to an Amtrak station, outside of San Francisco. Got on the Amtrak, and about an hour and a half, I was in Sacramento. It was pretty cool. Nice quiet ride. Just sat there and watched the countryside go by. It was cool.
I mean, that really is sort of a neat little experience, like the old days where you're riding in the dining car and the whammer's sitting there and the what's the guy's name? They're making bets on whether you can hit a home run with three pitch balls, and Robert
Yeah, yeah,
Redford sitting
right.
right next to you. It's got to be great. It really neat to hear that you took the train. That was kind of a neat experience, and you hadn't done that in 43 years of covering Major League Baseball, huh?
I think I took the train once from Baltimore to New York, but I think the Indians, as a team, took the train from
Oh wow.
Baltimore to New York. I think, and that's the only other time I can remember doing that, something like that.
And they all had fedoras and
Yeah,
newspapers stuck
right.
under their arms,
I
right? It
remember
was it was
Corey
all
Snyder. Corey Snyder said, "This is cool. This is like the natural." That was it's when we were standing in the train station in Baltimore.
well. And so for Stephen Vogt to go back to Sutter Health Park, that had to be a neat experience as well. I mean, his time in Oakland and his time in San Francisco gave him multiple tours in that stadium.
Yeah, he is a three-time Sacramento River Cat, twice with Oakland and once with the Giants. He loved it there. He said it was one of his favorite AAA parks, favorite AAA cities. It was like the former mayor coming back to his old hometown. Everybody knew him. He had a lot of friends there. I think he enjoyed the weekend.
Now, all that being said, there still have to be some major drawbacks to covering and playing and managing a Major League Baseball game in what's essentially a spring training or minor league ballpark.
Yeah, the ball flies there, Joe. As Stephen Kwan told us, as far as ballparks go, it has the fourth highest elevation of any ballpark in the big leagues. So the ball flies, and they said, part of their, approach to playing the outfield was, to play like you're in Arizona, play a little deeper, man. play a little deeper and just be prepared for that. The warning track in the outfield was wider, but Joe, I mean, if you're covering if you're covering the A's there, you're going to get in shape because you've got to run at the end of the game. You got to go down all the way to the bottom of the ballpark, run out a tunnel from home plate. You've got to run down the right or left field lines, and because the clubhouses are behind center field.
So if a player or a manager gets ejected, they have to walk out through the center field gate to go to the clubhouse there. Is that the case?
Yeah, yeah. If you get thrown out of the game, you've got to walk down the right field line and go
The
through a
walk of
hole in the
shame.
fence. So the walk of shame, you can't just hide in the dugout and go into the clubhouse, the adjoining clubhouse.
But also logistically for players who are trying to, get some swings in a batting cage. If it's late in the game, between innings, they've got to run out there and get their swings in. We saw Bo Naylor do that before a pinch hitting appearance, right?
Yeah, and Augustin Rivero, ended up warming up one of the pitchers because all the hitters were down in the cage I think in center field, in right field or center field, and Augie had to go out and warm the pitcher up.
What doesn't Augie Rivero do for this club? He's out there shagging balls in the outfield, helping with the infield at first base, translating for Jose Ramirez, helping out all over the place. Just a fantastic help there, and I'm sure pulling double duty, catching in between innings, warming up the pitchers. Probably no sweat for him. All right, that's just a kind of a little glimpse of behind the scenes of what it took to, get the Guardians in and out of the minor league park there in Sacramento over the weekend. And now let's talk about the All-Star voting. All-Star ballots released, the second release of totals so far, and it looks like Jose Ramirez has a stranglehold on third base right now in the American League. He's got a more than 1 million vote lead on Alex Bregman, the next closest third baseman. He will probably most likely be into phase 2, and if those votes are any indication, he will more than likely be voted in as a starter again, I believe, for the 4th time. This would be for Jose Ramirez looking to be voted in as a starter. That should come as no surprise. Jose Ramirez having an MVP season, one of the best seasons of his career. The big surprise, I think, is Steven Kwan in the outfield. Last week was in 4th place, just outside of a potential starting spot. Still in a good spot to move into phase 2 of the voting. But Steven Kwan right now has dropped to 5th. Javier Baez of the Detroit Tigers, the first place Detroit Tigers, leapfrogs over Mike Trout and and Steven Kwan, and is now in position to be if the votes counted today, he'd be a starter in the outfield along with Aaron Judge and Riley Green. What do you think of Javier Baez being the number 3 vote getter in the outfield for the AL?
They're stuffing the ballot box in the Motor City, man. It's it's the old time thing. What they do? The Reds did the same thing years and years ago, right? When they had like 6 starters in the All-Star game. But yeah, Baez. It's kind of revived his career. It's gone along with the resurgence of the Tigers. But I think the good thing is, Joe, as long as Kwan makes it in the final 6 in
In the top 6.
final. I think if to the second round, because all those votes go away then and the voting starts anew. So he's got a chance as long as he gets in to the second round, and he certainly deserves a all-star nod, Joe. He's really played well, on this road trip. Just the overall quality of his play on defense and really on offense as well. He's come around. He sets the table for that offense. Really had 6, 7, 8 hits again in the week over the weekend against the A's. He's playing very, very well.
Yeah, and he definitely deserves to be. I think if you're talking about the best left fielder all around, performance, Riley Green is having a great season. Steven Kwan is still my pick because he brings what he brings defensively and his instincts on the bases as well. That said, Aaron Judge is going to be the overall number 1 vote getter. He's going to, right now he has 2.7 million votes. He's going, those guys in each league, the overall number 1 vote getters automatically get a starting spot. So now it's between, 5 guys for 2 spots to start. I think Green should get a starting spot. You can start Riley Green in right field, but you definitely need to start Stephen Kwan in left field. And he would be, in my mind, if I'm Aaron Boone, if I'm choosing between Stephen Kwan and Javier Baez as a starter in the outfield, I want Stephen Kwan's defense, and I want the ability to put Stephen Kwan at the top of the lineup and be my leadoff man.
Yeah, definitely. Baez is, kind of, he's having a good year. I mean, he's a good player, Joe. We've seen that. He's been a good player for a lot of years. He struggled when he went to Detroit under that multi-year deal. And this is the first year he's kind of come out of his shell there. But for my money, Quan should be he has to really make the All-Star team and should be the starter.
And let's be honest, Javi Baez is a shortstop.
Yeah.
He's always been a shortstop. He just wasn't the best shortstop in the Detroit organization anymore. So they kicked him out to the outfield, and some a light switch went off. He's having a good year at the plate. He's playing all around really well. But to me the left fielder who's been there since the beginning of the year, in the beginning of his career, I think that's the guy I go with. As far as other Guardians in contention, not really much to speak of. Daniel Schneemann, ninth at second base. Carlos Santana, ninth at first base. And Bo Naylor, 10th at catcher. I don't think any of those guys have a realistic shot of making phase two. And really, if we're talking who deserves to be in Atlanta right now for Cleveland, it's Kwan, it's Ramirez, it's maybe Emmanuel Clase if you're looking that direction, and that's about it.
Yeah, it's going to be Stephen Vogt too. He'll be there.
Yeah. Oh,
by invitation of Aaron Boone.
Well, that was very nice of Aaron Boone to do that. Give Stephen Vogt a chance to be around all those guys. I think maybe Booney did that more for the guys in the clubhouse, the All-Stars themselves. Inviting Stephen Vogt is like inviting the entertainment. He brings the party when those guys when it's an environment like that. Stephen Vogt is the guy that you want in the room, because everybody just sort of gravitates, and he's sort of magnetic in that way, especially a room full of the best players in baseball. So kind of looking forward to that. All right, Hoynes, that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. We'll be back to preview the series against the Toronto Blue Jays that opens on Tuesday night, and we'll talk to you then.
Good deal.